Kristen.
Oh, hi, Kevin. How are you today?
I am wonderful. How are you?
Great. What's going on?
Not much. This is I don't even know how many episodes has this been of the Marriage and the Buff podcast?
No, I haven't checked. I didn't know we were supposed to.
I have to look.
Yeah.
But it's been a bunch.
It feels like, if I had to guess, 6 or 7.
No. I think last week I pushed 10 to Spotify and Apple Podcast.
No.
On YouTube, probably 6 or 7. But anyway, welcome to the Marriage and the Buff podcast. We are Kevin and Kristen.
Yep. Getting ready to go out of town for a vision retreat, which we've been talking about. And hopefully we'll have more to talk about after, how it went and what the focus is and what we got out of it. I think that'll be good.
Yeah, this will be our 3rd year in a row of doing a vision retreat, us.
Of the two of us.
Personally. And then this year we decided to take some friends along, take some other people along, because it has just been amazing for our marriage.
Yeah.
And let me go back to that. I wouldn't say that it's amazing, like, wow, this is awesome and everything changes or anything like that. The amazing part, I think, is that it does get you on the same page for the year. You go through, it's guided. There's a book, you get on the same page for the year.
So the people who are planners will love that aspect of it.
And then
having their spouse there to plan.
Yeah. And then the normal people like me who are the antithesis of planners, we like, all right, we did that. Let's move. But on the other side of
But you see value in it too?
Yeah. Because my value comes on the other side of it. I mean, I think it's good when we talk through things and we pray through them and we get on the same page. 100% value in that. And then throughout the year, I don't think we ever, because I know that's one of the things they talk about. You can go back during the year and look at what you said and stuff.
Middle of the year, I think it was a suggestion. Do it during a date night, open it up and say, hey, are we on track or do we want to get on track?
Yeah, I don't think we ever did that part of it. But last year, I remember when we went away, you brought the one from the year before. And I didn't even think about it. And as we went through it with the questions, we also looked back to see, hey, where are we right now? And
what are we still?
Yeah. What's our answer? What's our answer? Well, and more like, okay, this is what we think for this year. Now let's go back and see last year. And it was amazing to see, wow, some of the things we could check off.
The progress.
Yeah. Some of the things were like the same. Some of the things like were totally different. But as we looked back, we could see, okay, well, like God was working in this. He put this on our hearts. He gave us this vision. He cast it and like we worked towards it or we didn't, or maybe that wasn't from God. Now, as we prepared for this vision retreat this year, we pulled the books out again from the last.
Yeah, you wanted to get a jump on that. You wanted to see where we were before we even started.
Well, I don't know about that. I don't think I wanted to see that because I think that part I'd forgotten. But I did want to be like, all right, we're going to go talk to these couples about this. We're going to talk through it. So on all the retreats, we plan ahead. And I mean, I did most of the planning as far as that goes to, okay, this is
scheduling.
This is what we're going to talk about at this time. This is what we're going to talk through. Now on the other side of that, as always, like when we go into these things, pretty much all of them, we may have a rough outline of what we're going to talk about. Just like the podcast, we may be like, all right, we want to hit these points.
Right.
But the conversation we have, I mean, that conversation flows for whatever's going at that time. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like, oh, we're going to script all this stuff out, because our first podcast episode, we tried that. It was awful.
And our first podcast episode was probably awful.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But it was, we're like, oh, I'm going to do this. And it was awful. And I actually remember like a few times, like we talk to couples a lot. Sometimes it's one couple, sometimes it's 10, sometimes it's more, whatever it may be. But I remember like when we first started doing the life groups and stuff too, I'm like, all right, like that rigid, we're going to do this, this, and this. And God's like, you're funny. It's like that's not how it works, because people have questions and emotions and thoughts, and you can read the room and you might hear a sigh or whatever it is. And like, you need to regroup and redirect.
Or veer off if that's right. Where God's taking you.
Absolutely. There may be something that someone has a question about, or that just like that boom comes to your mind and stuff like that. And the more and more we've done that, and the more and more we do that, like last year when we did the XO conference at church and we had a breakout.
Yeah.
And we talked about communication. And I remember the night before, like we're sitting in the hotel and I'm like going through, I'm like, oh, we're going to talk about this, this, and this. And
yeah, you like to put together like a whole
I had a whole
dialogue.
Like bullet point. Well, it was more bullet points and all this different stuff. And then when we were up there on stage and we looked out and there's like, I don't know, a bunch of people. We look out, 50, 75 people, whatever it was. We look out and it's like, okay. And we just did what we do now. And we talked about it and talked through it and let the conversation go where it ends. And we invite people into it.
Because you're not really the planner. Mm-hmm. But for those things, you unnaturally plan almost just to be ready.
Yeah.
And I am the planner, but I do that much less. I'm okay with the bullet points or looking and seeing boom, 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 and just talking. So it's weird how that happens.
Absolutely. And if you can't hear, our dogs are going crazy right now. So that's always fun. That's a 5-pound poodle having a fit. And
it means that someone has
it means someone's at our house. So probably one of our girls. But where I was going with that is, same thing with the retreats and stuff like that. It's just like there has to be some kind of natural flow. I mean, there are the things we want to hit, the things we want to talk about, but God will lead that conversation. And, with going into this weekend, I'm going through and I'm like, all right, let me see where we were. Let me read through and I'm going to go through all the questions and think about it and think how it was for us and everything.
So that's why you pulled out the books.
That's why I pulled out the books. And then when I started looking at the books, like I had a blank one this year, and I'm like, well, I need to see where we were.
Okay.
And I did. I went back to that and I went back 2 years. Mm-hmm. And when I'm in that and I'm going back and I'm reading and I'm like, wow, that's, we put this here. This is what we were going to try to do. This is where we were headed,
and what
we're praying about doing and stuff. And then I kind of read through that whole book and went through and I'm like, oh, okay. And I see where we ended and stuff. And I'm thinking through it. And I think I was talking to you a little bit about it when I was doing it. I'm like, oh, do you remember this and that? Mm-hmm. But then when I pulled last year's book out, so we've got the first year and then the second year. And I'm reading last year's book. And it was like, okay, I know when we did these questions that we did the question before we ever looked back. So it was natural.
Yes, we did. We did not do what we did this year.
There were things that God had the exact same things on our hearts.
Yep.
The exact same thing we prayed through. The exact same want. The exact same ask for each other, for God, for all this stuff. And I remember the first one, it was kind of a weird situation when we went into that one. Not weird. I mean, we were good and it was all good. And we'd been down to XO and we're like, oh, this is exciting. We went to the conference the year before and we learned about it. We're like, all right, we're going to do this. And I remember we went to a hotel and we went away and we get there and it's like, all right, well, you were supposed to do this homework part. I'm like,
right.
Oh, we never opened the book to know that we had homework.
So it was like, the book and worked on it.
All right. So we screwed that part up. And then we go through it and it kind of gets you to analyze yourself a little bit and your spouse and your thoughts of yourself and your spouse. So it's like, all right, we got this. We go through it. And looking back on those answers, they weren't the best answers that I gave. And I mean, you can speak to your own, but I was like, they're maybe a little harsh or a little whatever, or maybe a little one-sided. I don't know. But then we get into it and you start with love and the vision for your marriage and all this stuff. And like, where do you see God taking you? And at that point, we were looking for a church. We weren't at a church. We were kind of in between church. We'd been in a church. COVID happened and all the stuff with
us. COVID happened. There were
and church changed.
Churches. Yeah, church
just changed. It wasn't like, oh, we go to this church and it's no. It was like it turned the whole church world upside down.
Yeah.
And
we were probably ready for a fresh start at that point anyway.
So at that point, we were going to a little church. And it was actually a friend of ours who used to be part of a church that we led that has this church, and he still does. And so it's pretty cool. So we go to his church and we're like, and we're going through and this vision retreat was in January. And we're going through, and I was like, be more involved with blank church. And the next thing on it was like couples group ?
Well, before that, you had in your heart, it said something about Kevin Men's Group too, remember?
Yeah, it did.
So yes.
So yeah, the men were on my heart.
And then you did put couples on there.
Yeah, I put couples group.
That was 2 years ago, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so that was one of the things in there. It was like, okay, couples group, men's group. And so that was like what we're doing. And then another one talks about friendships and stuff like that.
Yes, because we didn't have really any tight friends who could speak into us.
Yeah, we had friends, but we didn't have people we were doing life with on a regular basis.
That's better.
We had a lot of acquaintances and like Facebook friends, for lack of better terms. And I mean, we had people we saw at church, we had people here or there and everything else. But when it came down to it, we were kind of doing life on a little island. Funny, we live on an island, but
just alone.
Yeah, we're just doing it alone, but together, which is a dangerous place to be for so many reasons. We could go into that.
We had come through so much stress in our marriage that we were committed to doing it alone together.
Yeah, so we were working on, that at that time we were really in a period of like just rebuilding us and working on us. Now,
but learning too.
Yeah.
Right.
At the same time with that though, like we were working on us. It wasn't just like a season of, no. We were working on us.
We were working daily.
Actively, daily. We were reading books, releasing the podcast. We were going to conferences. We were talking through the hard stuff, like
the word too. We were
deep in the word, like every day, just like, God, what do you have? What is this? Because we knew how bad we'd screwed up, both of us, and grown apart.
We wouldn't have made it.
No.
If we didn't put that work in.
Yeah, and we really did invite Jesus into our relationship every day, all day.
Yeah.
And
we're still failing daily too. Like we were also not, like it was raw and it was a lot.
Yeah, it was. And, but I remember that one of those things were, there was a particular couple that had been in our lives for
like with
14
our kids
years or so.
Yeah,
and had been through some ups and downs, and we'd been through ups and downs and been there at the same times and maybe a little bit for each other, but not so much and stuff. And we specifically named them, but it was also, develop godly friendships with other couples.
Yeah. And we didn't tie them together. Like it wasn't like, oh, we're going to be besties with them.
No,
it wasn't.
Nope. So
those on our heart.
Yeah. So those, and then after that, it was like read the Bible every day. I think there was like read a marriage book a month or a parenting book, and
those non-negotiables, which maybe we'll talk about sometime, and like is a really good foundation, especially when you're trying to rebuild or when you're coming to a point where you're like, I don't even know where to start with my spouse, with my husband, with my wife. But starting and saying, okay, like you said, these are our like little goals that we're saying is lacking and we need to do it.
Yeah.
Be in the Word each day, and I think we sent each other.
We did. We went through the Bible. We went through the Bible in a year. We did. I can't remember. It was the Green Bible. I don't remember what it was called, but it was a green.
I thought it was like Bible in a year. I thought
it was, but I don't remember the actual thing.
It was chronological. That was hard.
So we're here in January, and we got Genesis, Exodus, and then it just, oh man.
Well, because remember, there's like Numbers and Chronicles.
Chronicles and Kings were the exact same story over and over, and the same thing. And man, Leviticus, it was hard. That was hard. So what we learned and gleaned from that is, do not read the Bible chronologically unless you are like doing some like deep dive study of like just.
It just wasn't for us,
and it was like
it took a long time to get to Jesus, like October. Like I was like, oh, I can't.
So we hit the New Testament. It's
April. It's not even summer, and I'm like, oh, when will October come? Because I want to get to Jesus.
Yeah,
but
it was but made it through. And you know, that was one of the things. Come December 31st, I was thankful.
Yes, that was a good year.
Finish Revelation.
And I will tell you, so that was a non-negotiable that we had set down, which is just basically a fancy way of us saying like what we will do every day, what we commit, our commitments, right? And then we started date night.
I think we'd start date night before.
We might have.
We had
that
started
was
date
on
night
our
before that.
radar. Like
that was one of those things that's like, listen, we screwed this up so bad. We started date night after we went to EXO the first time. We went down to Pittsburgh to EXO.
No, you're right. I don't know.
I want to say it was April of the year before. And man, we saw Dave and Ashley Willis from the Naked Marriage. And Jimmy Evans, Jimmy Rollins. I mean, there were so many of these people who just poured into us. And I remember being like, wow, what is this? Mm-hmm. We had been married 22 years and had no idea.
No, we were getting these biblical concepts being taught to us, and it was new and it was fresh, and we just listened to every single podcast after that we possibly could.
Yeah.
It was really a thing. And I think that we want to talk about, like, if you're a couple, it's important to do these things, these special things.
Yeah. And I will say of that though, like we heard this stuff and we're like, I remember that weekend. It was a great, great weekend. We had time together. It was really cool because the way EXO does it, when you go, it's like Friday night, and then you go back to your hotel or what if you live there or whatever. But you go back, and then you have that time together Saturday morning, bright and early. And let me tell you what, that church in Pittsburgh, we did it twice. It is freaking cold. Because you're up on a hill and it is still early enough in the year that the wind blows and it is cold that morning. So you're huddled together and you get in there and it's great once you get in there. And then they have great worship and you have the first half plus a little bit of the day. I think they end by 1:00. And you've got the rest of the time where you can, like that year, we went to Pittsburgh and explored Pittsburgh.
That was fun.
We worked a lot there 20 some years ago, but we hadn't been to Pittsburgh in 20 years to do anything. Like we'd pass through, but and we had a great time.
And together, we didn't really have a lot of, like, we have gone away together, but not recently.
Yeah.
So it was
fun. But we had like all this stuff we learned, and then we actually talked about it, which was like this crazy concept of wow. And the really cool thing that I think in the end that I think we may have gotten in Pittsburgh or on the way back or certainly not too far from that, the stuff that they said was just completely countercultural, completely antithesis of what the world tells you, but it made absolute sense.
Yeah, and it was those nuggets that you took and held on to throughout the year.
Yeah, like, it just made sense.
Yeah, and that you got real tangible things to take away. So not only the tips and tricks that you got there, but these marriage experts and these people that we were listening to and getting all of this information from had podcasts and had books and had tangible things that you could take with you in the day-to-day. And we did that. So we read the books together. You bought us a lot of double books.
Yeah, we bought a ton of books. And we did
so many we can do, which is nice. And podcasts, right? Like we listened to podcasts.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't.
Hey, listen to this one.
Yeah.
Or what do you think about this one? Which is another great thing you can do.
Yeah, and I think that's like kind of fast forward to why we do this. Is like we listened to some great stuff. I think the first one we listened to, even before we went to EXO, was Ryan and Selena from Fierce Marriage.
Yep.
And like their stuff was like great. I was like, wait a minute, you mean? And it was just like you were drawn in. You're like, your heart is listening to this stuff, especially if you've been through a season where maybe you had a trauma, maybe you had like almost a divorce or whatever it is, or maybe you're just in a season where you're just drifted so far apart that you're like, you wake up in the morning, you're like, I don't even know who this is next to me,
and you're empty. So you're empty. So empty that you listen to these stories of hope and you listen to words from Jesus and you listen to this knowledge and you're like filled up, like it's like the water that it, like you just can't, like you said, you can't get enough, and you listen to one and then another and then another, and different churches too. At that point we were listening to, I think there were like 7 to 10 churches that we listened to every single week.
Yeah, there were. And I remember from that, and somewhere I made the jump in the listening from Ryan and Selena from Fierce Marriage to Dave and Ashley Willis.
Yep. Also great. I don't even, they
like
don't
the Naked
have
Marriage.
Naked Marriage podcast?
No, they have Marriage on the Line now, which, but the Naked Marriage podcast was on for years and part of XO. And just, if you have a question about marriage, if there's anything going on, any topic, anything, like there was an episode for it.
Yeah,
and
very true.
We were listening to them as they were coming out, and then like they'd reference something else, and you would go back, and I mean, like the archives for the Naked Marriage, there's anything, and they had guests that just different stories and different ministries and different stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I'd listen to some guests, then get their Instagram or whatever, and then follow them and get more information, and it was like this rabbit hole of just amazing like resources.
Yeah,
so that definitely strengthened us,
and so that opened us up to XO Marriage and Jimmy Evans and everything, Jimmy and Irene Rollins and Narup and I mean, just so many of these guys and girls and just amazing stuff and just resources of the books. And we read so many books that year. We read a lot of books that year, and we would read them together, but not together. We didn't sit down and go, read them out loud or whatever at the same, but we would read a chapter or two and then we would talk about it. Or like the Bible reading, something we did and do, like we'll be reading, and are we reading the same thing every day? Pretty much.
Yeah.
And then, but out of the same thing we're reading, we will text. We'll say, all right, we'll look like what spoke to me today, and we'll text it to the other person and kind of expound on it, or say like, oh, this is what it said to me, or this really meant something to me, or man, did you see this? Because this is what I think of about this. And it just starts a conversation, and it starts a conversation about God's word. So what better thing to have a conversation about?
Yeah, that's really good, because I think that especially if you're walking through a really hard season, finding those conversation starters that are helpful and don't put you into a negative fight or something, like a negative mood. Are also not like some of the cheesy conversation starters that are just meaningless. Like, what actress do I look like? Or, this is a
conversation last night from bed. We had this conversation. Dave and Ashley actually just yesterday I posted a few
fun date night questions.
Yeah.
Which that's what it is. But getting back on track, because we're not going to say who you think I look like. But when you do that, you're having a meaningful discussion, and it perpetuates more meaningful discussions.
Yes.
So if you're in a season where I don't talk, I don't even know where to start, I don't even do that. Just read a chapter.
Yeah. And then
same chapter, start with a chapter and
And even if
something out.
Yeah, even if you do that. So whatever the chapter. And if you're starting in the Bible, start in the New Testament, please. And like, honestly, if I'm telling you which one, go to John. Go to John. Go to Acts. Like,
it's funny because you're like an Old Testament guy.
I am. I can tell you like really great places to go in there. But like, if it's new to you, if you're like trying this Jesus thing out, if you don't know, if you're kind of kicking the tires, or guess what? If like things are hard and you need the thing you need when things are hard is Jesus. I don't care if it's in your marriage. I don't care if it's at work. I don't care if it's with your kids. I don't care where it is with your health. You need Jesus. So John is, in my opinion, the simple gospel. It's the one that you can understand with, I mean, it just speaks to your heart. It cuts right through to your heart and your soul. And then after that, go to Acts. and see what the early
Romans.
But no, go to Acts. See what the early church did. Look at it.
Yeah.
Look at these guys. Look how it spread. Look what happened. Look what it looks like to be a church.
Acts
like doing life together. Go to the end of Acts 2. Look what that early church looked like, doing life together.
And we didn't even know we wanted that. So
going back to the retreat. I know we kind of went down a big rabbit hole there, but we're there, and it's like, okay, so we want to share our story. That was part of it. I remember that was part of it.
Find couples,
get plugged into. We thought that church, the church, whatever church.
We didn't have a.
Well, that was kind of a question mark. Where it's like,
that was our question mark.
And that was good. We were kind of okay.
And we've been involved in many churches. So
for lots of years. So it wasn't
very strange for us to be looking.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. And I think that was just a sign of the time. I think that was a sign of where our relationship was, how far we had drifted, not only from one another, but from God.
From God. Yeah. That's a good point.
Because we were so caught up with stuff, whether it be work, whether it be our girls, whether it just be with, you know what, I don't want to do what you want to do right now.
And what a detriment we gave to them at that point to sort of be separate from God. I mean, I know they see us go back, but I still think that, that was a tough time.
Absolutely. And with everything going on, with all of our issues, it was like COVID time.
Right.
And I think that's the good and the bad of COVID. Like if you said, is there something positive? Absolutely. I think it is. I think COVID put people together. COVID forced conversations. COVID forced you to look at one another. But in the end, COVID forced you to look inwardly to yourself. Like you were isolated. One of the biggest problems
you couldn't hide.
Yeah, one of the biggest problems I see in America today, in the world today, but America specifically, I mean, we are entitled people. We are
selfish.
The Amazon culture. We are the people that have to be entertained 24/7. And COVID kind of pulled the rug out on a lot of that. We couldn't go be entertained. We couldn't surround ourselves. We couldn't hide in the crowd. And we got bored with the entertainment we had. And when that happens, that our eyes start to look inwardly. And a lot of times we don't like what we see. And I think that was one of the things with COVID. With us, I mean, it was the catalyst. It was that thing, that needle that broke the camel's back. It was like, because I honestly believe if it hadn't been for COVID, you and I don't know about still today, if it would have made it that long, but we would have still been running these lives that were just going apart.
I think also, I feel like you said with COVID, we didn't just have that as a pressure. We had a lot of other pressures that were happening at that same time.
Yeah.
And it was like, how much can something take before it implodes?
Yeah.
And it was all just pushing down on us.
Yep.
And we had no response. We did not have the word to push outward. We did not have good friends, godly counsel to help us battle that. And it just sort of just all collapsed on us, and we were weak.
Yeah. And we were very weak. We didn't even, like, we were together, proximity. And with a lot of that stuff, like, we worked at things like when there would be a fire, when something would come up, when there would be this really hard thing, we would work at it. But even with that, we didn't work at it together. We both had our mindset of what we needed to do to get through it. And we just, like, that's when you just, like, put your head down and push through.
Yeah. And you can't run on adrenaline forever.
Yeah. And that's good. You really, really can't. And like with us, that was the catalyst for the breaking of us. And in retrospect, I am thankful for it. I think it did cause a lot of changes in this world. And I think it either changed people for the good or for the bad. I think there are people that came out and they are stronger. They learned more about themselves. They learned more about their relationships and stuff like that. And they fought through it, and their eyes were open to some things. I think on the other side, there are people who crumbled.
Right.
And just became complacent, and they liked being home, and they liked getting government money, and they liked not having to do this or that. And they liked just that responsibility. Maybe not even, I wouldn't say responsibility, but the pressures were taken away. And unfortunately now, we are so far from that listen, life's got to get back to quote unquote normal.
It's crazy
that there's a lot of people struggling with that part today.
How far
like they have just drawn inward so much that it's a scary world. It's a scary world to live in.
It's so far removed. Like you said, you went one way or the other, and you continued to go that way.
Yeah. Like you're still on that path.
So far removed from that, and you might be double removed from where you could be because you chose to implode. But we're also so far removed from that experience. I mean, we're 5 years down the road, really.
Yeah.
And we're still saying we've got to get back. We've got this little event in the grand scheme of life puts such an impact on everything. It's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And like with us, it did, but it's also the catalyst that made us stronger in the end. It's the one that opened our eyes to who we were becoming or had become, and our need for God. Yes. Like we can't do this on our own. We just can't. It's impossible. Yes. You cannot do it without God.
No.
Period.
So we dove fully into it. We set our non-negotiables, and then we heard about this vision retreat, which we thought this is perfect.
Yep.
And now looking back on that, we're at the point where we want to do this every year. But that first year, the thing I remember about that first year, I know you're reflecting on all the different areas, but the thing I remember most about, now we did what was suggested. We went into a hotel room for the weekend, away from everything.
We were a whole 10 minutes away from our house.
Well, by away, I mean not like around the responsibilities of the kids, the house, the dogs, the the
That's right. We were in Niagara Falls, the honeymoon capital of the world.
Yeah, we were 10 minutes away. But maybe we had our phones on, but regardless, we had no distractions.
Yes.
And you went through these topics. Now the book was great that we used, and I'm sure you don't have to use that book. And there may be other
resources.
I
actually in the last couple of weeks I've been looking at different things, and there are other couples that like podcasters and ministry and different stuff that do like their own retreats where they use their own materials and stuff. And I think that's great because I think we could refine some things, and we always tweak things and work them anyway.
And it's easy.
But it's a nice easy start. Like listen, if you are looking to get on the same page, to talk through, pray through, what's God calling you to, what's your vision for the year, get the Vision Retreat book from XO Marriage.
And real easy over like a mission statement or whatever they call it, value statement, like just to start thinking about that.
Start it.
I'm sure there's so many more in-depth ones, but for us, this was perfect because it hit all the big heavy hitters, kids, money.
So let's talk about that. So the stuff that I said we'd gone through.
Behind closed doors, and I remember those hard topics we had to talk about.
Yeah.
We had to face. It was just the two of us answering a question, and we had to put something down. And I remember crying. Like,
that first one was hard.
The first one was hard. It was so hard. I remember how hard it was.
And that's what I was going to say. Like we went through this thing, we were kind of forced to look at ourselves, and we gave positives to our spouse and stuff like that.
And we still
we could work on.
And we still weren't.
And we talked about, this is what we want to do. This is what. And then what's the next topic? Kids.
Wow. We were so far. Like I think we were scraping at just trying to fix us and just like trying to get to the next thing and trying to survive through everything, that now we have to dig deep and take those outer layers off.
Yeah.
And start to examine.
Yeah. And
it was freaking hard.
Yeah, and like the kids section, and that's, like I said, that's that first real jump in the book. And that kids section, I remember, it's like that was one of the things that we still are different in many, many ways on that. Like our thoughts, our child rearing philosophy, maybe, or whatever. Like the fundamentals, 100%. Listen, here's the bottom line. Like we 100% agree on, like, they need Jesus. We need Jesus.
Yes.
That's it.
We can't force Jesus on anyone.
They need morals. They need, you're not going to lie. You're not, those are concrete. There's no flex on those or anything else. And that's 100% between both of us. Now, where we vary is like, okay, well, if you did this, if you broke this rule, if whatever happened, well, how would we deal with that? What would a punishment be? Or what would correction look like?
The day-to-day playing out of that. Or how do we get to those goals? You're saying we have the same goals.
What are the rules? I think that was like, what are the rules? Like,
and
we need rules.
There's always going to be someone who's more lenient, and there's always going to be someone who's more strict. I mean, you hear about that, like, which is the strict parent, which is. So I don't think it's an anomaly that we disagree. I think that's a hot topic for people. Kids
and if it is argument. Not, it's a conversation you need to have, because I think that was the biggest thing. Like our conversations about that let's say like our self-destruction, there really weren't conversations.
No,
there may have been like one of us was upset about one thing, and we might yell at that other one about it, or we might make a comment or say something, but that was it. And then it was back to, we're kind of going this way as far as our parenting and stuff like that. Like I said, the fundamentals were there. How we got to that goal, how we dealt with the day-to-day, we were not on the same page.
Thinking back to when they were little, we never talked about it.
No.
And we never talked about philosophy.
Not
or maybe even had one. I mean, I know we agreed on things like staying home, taking care of them, breastfeeding, like real basics when they were babies.
Yeah.
I liked looking into cloth diapers. You said no way. And
oh Lord, crunchy mama.
No.
Crunchy mamas. Oh.
So anyway, but it wasn't anything we talked about ever.
No, and I think that starts, like, number one, like, if you are married, you need to talk about everything. And when something comes up.
And did you want to?
Absolutely not. No, I didn't, because I think that goes back a lot to a family of origin, where we were raised totally different. I mean, we're from different states to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Totally different background. You grew up in a city, in a suburb of a city. I grew up in a suburb of one of the biggest cities, but I grew up on a farm. And that was different. That was nothing. And I mean, even still, when we go to my dad's or something like that, you're like, oh, this is dirty. There's all this. There's the animals. There's this and that. I mean, this is my princess who will not get her hands dirty. Like, if her hand gets dirty, she needs to get it clean.
Yeah, I just wash my hands.
So it's totally different than the way I grew up. And also, I was an only child.
Yeah.
So, only child from a farm who had literally everything given to him.
Your grandparents raised you, so they were already established, right? So, like, they were not...
Yeah, I didn't have, like, mom and dad. My mom and dad, my mom left when I was 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And my dad wasn't, I mean, he was there. Like, he was my guardian. But I was raised by his parents mostly. Mm-hmm. I'd see my mom some weekends and stuff like that. And my other grandmother, I would see her mom a lot as well. But for all intents and purposes, my grandparents raised me. And they were old. I mean, I'm not saying old, but they were older. And, yeah, I wasn't like their child. I was their grandchild. So if I wanted something, if I wanted something, I got it. You know, oh, here's a 3-wheeler, here's a 4-wheeler, here's this, here's that. You know, and I was an only child. So to entertain an only child on a farm when there's not people around, you've given them everything. Like, if you want something here, this will entertain you and get you to stop talking to me. Here you go. Whereas you were raised with your parents in the city. Not
the city.
Listen, you had a neighbor. I could go pee anywhere. I could pee anywhere I wanted to. It didn't matter. Any direction. It was all good. We had ponds.
I biked down the street.
I had 3-wheelers and 4-wheelers. I had bikes too.
I had to share with my sister Barbie dolls.
I didn't share with anyone.
Yeah. That alone is like, you're still at the point where if somebody, like, we're married.
Yeah.
We're one.
Yes.
Therefore, if I want to dip in your dill sauce, it should be okay.
Ew.
If I want to try something off your plate, that should be okay.
Ugh, I don't know about that.
You are very food protective. And I think it's because you're an only child.
I don't know. That's weird. I mean, I don't think of it that way. I don't think of it that way. But yeah, and I don't know. And maybe it's kind of some of that weird stuff like our one daughter. I don't want your germs. I don't want you to.
I don't think it's that.
So I don't know. But anyway, the entire point of that rabbit hole was that, you know, we're different. So we didn't.
We were very different.
So she had totally different ideas than I had.
Yeah.
Like
and
I said, the
had
core
a bedtime.
Yeah, the core fundamental was there. Like,
right.
We want, you know, these are the things we believe. This is how we want them to end up. But how we got there, we
didn't even know.
No clue.
And also, I think the dynamics in our relationship made it so that we, at that point, when they were little, we didn't talk. Like, I don't think that our friends right now would realize you being such a talker. Back then, you were not a talker.
No, I didn't want to talk to anybody.
Like, you would cover it all up. Like, now you talk through things, you explain, you know, you're a talker. Getting you to stop is a challenge sometimes. So back then, it wasn't. So I sort of went along. It was easier to go along with what you said than pick fights on every little thing. So, like, if you were like, it's too tough to instill a bedtime, we're just going to leave them up and let them watch TV till 2. Okay, whatever, we'll figure it out. And too exhausted as a mom, you know, just new mom having more kids. Like, I mean, even those little choices were not talked about, is what I'm saying. So I think that this book made you, that was the first time.
Yeah. I mean, we had some things happen where, like, we had to talk. But I think the first time we actually sat down and totally got on the same page was then.
Right, like answered questions and had a goal to make a decision, because
together, a decision together. Because what you said a minute ago, like, that sucks. Like that it was easier for you just to go along than to have a conversation with me, because the conversation would go bad.
Yeah. I mean, that was survival.
That's not a place that you need. That's not a place anybody.
That's how I eventually got to where we got to, of wanting to leave.
Yeah.
Like that. Those are the foundational years of me getting there, right?
Yeah.
Like being so alone and isolated and not being able to communicate with anyone.
Yeah.
So that first year of Vision Retreat, after all of this background, super hard.
Yeah, but hold on. What? So we went through kids.
Uh-huh.
What's the next chapter?
Money.
How? What?
Does anyone think that we're the same philosophy of money?
And let me just say this. Jimmy Evans is a funny dude. Like, he's like, okay, you guys are going to have a retreat to work on your marriage.
Yeah, it sounds great.
Here's your first 2 topics. Kids
and money.
And
kids took us Do you remember we didn't even finish these first
we were
four questions?
We got to walk away from this,
and we left
and take a break and go to dinner. But then it's like, oh, all right, we made it through that. We maybe agreed. I don't know. We're probably gonna have to revisit this anyway.
Probably didn't agree, but we more agreed to disagree.
Yeah, we turn the page and it's like finances. It's and we're like, wow.
We are never getting through this book. Like, we need a year to talk. Like, how can we not even walk through 4 questions?
Yeah. So, again, we are 100% opposites on that.
100%.
That is family of origin as well. A lot of it.
A lot you've already explained. Part of it. I mean, I was in I'd say strong middle class neighborhood in the suburbs. Not like high upper, like not like high middle class, not low middle class by any means. Just right in the middle, I think. Mm-hmm. Working parents, they saved and we got stuff. It wasn't like we felt deprived of anything, but we didn't get everything we asked for. We heard no. Also had my grandma and my aunt who wanted to spoil me and my sister. Mm-hmm. So we would go out, get toys, go to dinner with them, and it was like a treat.
Yeah.
And so life was good, but I really felt the pressure of saving, like all throughout.
Yeah.
Like, make sure you save. Tithing was even brought up. Like, I would hear them talk about tithing. Mm-hmm. So it's not like that was ever a foreign concept, which I doubt you probably even thought about, right?
No, I mean, growing up, like God was something for a wedding and a funeral, maybe. And now on the other side of that, my mom, after she left, she met a great guy.
Yeah.
And a godly guy, and after some time they ended up in a church, and like God did something amazing. Yeah,
but you were still an observer.
Yeah, but I still, maybe 1 or 2 weekends a month or something like that, I would go, and then I'd have to go to church, and it was good and it was bad. I mean, when you're a kid, it's like, oh, I gotta go here, but then like some of the people were good, and like it was a good environment, and it's different and stuff. But it's like one of those things you did sometimes. It wasn't like you didn't have to, because I didn't even have to go there. If I didn't want to, I'd just say, no, I don't want to go there. I don't want to go this weekend.
Oh, you didn't?
So I didn't have to go to my mom's. I didn't have to do any of that. So, and it eventually came to a point when I got older, it's like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that.
When did you stop going to your mom's?
Probably... I mean, I think it really went down like 13, 14, maybe somewhere around there. Okay. 12, 13, 14. I'd have to really think about that.
So like your teen years,
somewhere like that. But by the time I could drive,
never.
No.
Did you see her on holidays then, or like
sometimes? And I mean, I would go by, but like I would go by and be there for a while, and I'd leave.
Right.
I don't think after that I ever was like, oh, I'm spending the weekend. Never.
So I mean, you had half siblings.
Yeah, I still do.
Right. But I still mean, at this point, obviously a different relationship, but it wasn't like you were raised with siblings, so you still really consider yourself an only child as far as being raised.
Yeah, I mean, there was no 24/7. There was never a 24/7. Like even for a year or anything like that. Never ever.
Did you have a room at your mom's? Like, did you have your own room?
Part of the time,
or was it like
depending where they were,
extra room?
Yes and no. Yeah, I mean, probably more that than the other. But I mean, I don't know. I didn't think of it that way at that time.
Yeah, I'm just wondering.
I didn't think of it that way at that time. But, so, yeah. And other than that, like with my it would be like a funeral would be church. I remember my grandmother's brother, her brother and one of her sisters. Now, they were over the top. They were like charismatic, like super Pentecostal, like over the top. enough so that even today, I would not walk in that church. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm just saying I'd probably walk in, but it would not be a place I'm like, oh, this is our church. You know what I mean?
Maybe,
just that over the top.
Maybe you're viewing it differently then than you would be now.
But I will say on the other side of that, they were all about Jesus, and they would tell you, and it wasn't like a push it down your throat. It was a genuine care and concern.
Oh, okay.
And so I'm not saying that would be my Uncle Harold and Aunt Ivel.
Oh, okay.
And they were like, I remember then is okay in the day to day, but you didn't want to go there because it was it was over the top. You know what I'm talking about. Like there was somebody speaking in tongues and there was people falling out and there was, it was full on revival every time.
Okay.
So, but on a day to day, they were some of the nicest people you ever met, caring people, and would share Jesus with everyone they saw.
Yeah.
100%.
Authentic.
100%. They believed what they were, 100%. So, I mean, but that's it. That was it. When I was in military school, I was in the choir, the chorus. We didn't have a choir, it was chorus.
What is the difference? And why do some schools call it choir and some
because
schools
I was in
chorus?
an all-guys military school. We did not have a choir. There were no sissy boys there. It was
anyway,
the
all right.
chorus.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Like, we carried guns around.
All right.
But anyway, like, part of that, and let me say this. I was in chorus for years, and it was great. I enjoyed that. But the bottom line was there was a lot of girls in chorus. When you're in military school, there are no girls. But you got to go sing at the girls' school, and you got to go to the churches, and you got to sing at the churches. So it was all about girls. It wasn't. But in that, I did go to some different churches and stuff like that.
This is why you say you know how teenage boys think.
Absolutely. 100%.
Okay. So getting back to the money thing, we were raised very differently.
Yeah.
So the money one was.
Man, and I remember.
Night and day.
Like what you just said about the tithe. I remember like when I first heard about that, I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, God gets what? Why? I don't understand. That's mine.
And where we are now, 10% really just doesn't even sound like a high amount.
No, it's like nothing.
But when you are looking, it's a chunk.
New,
yeah.
I think when it's new to you, and I think I will say that, like when I came to God, when I came to Jesus, when I was saved, we were a lot younger. And a lot younger. It's funny. It's kind of like that thing that we talked about with the girls and like, you guys, it was so long. You don't even remember when we were poor. And they're like, oh, we remember.
We know.
Like, we know. We remember. And, so it wasn't easy. And I'm not going to say today's easy. I don't think life's ever easy.
No, but we are
in a totally
better.
Financially, you know what I mean?
We're in a different road.
Totally different thing. But like, so I think.
So giving any
I think it was
penny,
a little, yeah.
Like we were to the penny.
Yeah.
And we didn't have a budget.
No. I spent on whatever, and then whatever's left over, we paid the bills. Basically, was how it went. Yeah, sometimes if we paid them. So that was hard. I mean, that was a hard concept. Now, fast forward, that kind of was an ebb and flow in us over the years. Like, the closer we were to God, the easier it was and stuff like that. The further we were from God, well, you know what? God, I got to pay this. I got this part, which we learned was a huge mistake. But I remember that first year, it was on there. It said tithe. That was one of the things.
The first year of the vision retreat? The
first year of the vision retreat.
Okay.
Because that was like that season where it's like, yes, no. And it was yes. But if something came up, it was like, all right, well, I got to take care of this. And we didn't fully rely and fully understand.
And to be clear, this is like the joy in tithing man. Like you are now. Like you have so transformed in that area. The second something hits our bank account, bloop, you send it. And I think it's really helpful that you can literally send it like with a button.
Yeah,
like,
I think
that's obviously easier than holding it, taking it out of the bank, putting it somewhere. I'm not saying,
I agree 100%.
But and sending it to me with a little rejoicing emoji or something like, yay, look what we get to give.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that in that year after we did that that vision retreat,
that transformed,
that flipped.
Yeah.
That totally flipped. And when that switch flipped,
that was one of
I think
the
that was
switches.
I think for me, that was that final holdout.
Yeah.
I think that
the money.
Yeah, I think it really was. I think, we all have those things we hold on to. It's like, God, help me with this. God, I need you. God, this. I mean, when we had our issues, you were one of those. I just would not. That was it. And I put you in a place that you didn't need to be in. You were in a position that you couldn't be in. You were God in some ways. You always took care of this, and you did this, and you were this, and you'd always be there. And that broke. And that really forced me to give a lot of things to God and think about it and think through it and think how I was wrong and stuff. And I think we'd gotten pretty much everything else. And that was that final piece. And I remember, I just looked at this thing again today, and that was the money one. That was it. Tithe. That was the first one.
Yeah.
And so that year, so that was the first two. And then what else? There's
There's
sex, intimacy, there's family, there's extended family relationships.
Yeah.
But
there's a
listen,
lot of hard topics.
Yeah, but let me tell you what.
Those were our two, at that point, those were our two struggles.
Yeah, and I think if you had kids, they're going to be there. I don't care where they are in age or whatever. They're going to be there.
Maybe if you are on the same page when they are babies, when they are little, and you start this early enough and you start talking over and devoting a whole weekend.
Yeah.
To planning out the year. And it doesn't mean I say planning because I don't want someone to think that it is in January we're going to have this goal. In February, you're not detailing out your year. You're just putting those things that you would like to focus on. Those things that you would like to set as important.
Yeah, you talk through these subjects. You come up with a vision. You ask God for a vision. I think
you pray together.
I don't think it's you come up with it. I think through talking through it, praying through it,
as a couple,
just having that open communication and inviting God into it.
Yes,
I think He kind of guides the hand as you write those things.
Yeah.
And I'll say it this way too: the easier that they are to write, I think the more God's in them. And you know what I mean? If you're hesitant in them and stuff like that, and sometimes you have to come back and revisit them. Sometimes it's like, I can't answer that question right now. Let's move on and come back to it, and let's go through it.
Yeah.
But that's what it is. It's not like, oh, well, January, February, in March we're going. No, it's not that.
No. And sometimes, as we've noticed now, going back and looking at the previous years, we're going to be still working on that again. But we also see those victories, which are just so good. Something's good, but it's so good because you see progress on paper and you see God's miracles and you see Him working in our lives. And it is, I'm telling you, friends, it is faith building.
Yeah, and I think that's the other part. So we went through and we had written those things down. And last year when we came through, I talked about now what the ones were from the 2 years ago. And then when I looked at last year's and I go through them, and there's a lot of same kind of stuff, but they changed a little bit. And last year when we went through them, you put a check mark by the ones that we'd done. So when I went back and looked at the other ones, but we went through again, didn't look at the year before's answers and stuff. And what's our shared thing as a couple? And it said couples ministry. It said, pour into other couples, share our story. And it said podcast.
Which I was so resistant.
Yeah, it did. It said podcast. And those were those. And then it said the personal things. And it said continue to build relationship with other couples. And, those two right there, the ministry, our group, continue our group and stuff like that and all that stuff. Those were continuations of the things that were new the year before that we were like, okay, we need to do this. We need to play this. And we saw that, and we could look back and see God is doing this, and God is working through this.
And we're surrendering, and we are just trying to be faithful.
Yeah, and then last year, it was the couples ministry. It was continue the group. It was those things, and then the other thing it was the conference, the XO conference last year.
Yeah, yeah.
Which was nothing even a possibility or thought.
No, not on our radar.
In our mind. Yeah. The year before. Nope. It was like nothing. Same with the podcast. I mean, these are things that were just like, no. We want to tell our story. I mean, there's a whole thing there, like a vision statement. It was tell our story when God prompted it to whoever, wherever, whenever, which we continue to do today.
Yes.
Whether it be one-on-one, in a group, or in front of 100, it don't matter. Yeah. We'll tell our story because somebody needs to hear it.
And I really have a passion that I don't think was ever there for hearing other couple stories and helping other people hear other couple stories.
Yeah.
Because I think that we haven't been through every scenario. Yeah. We've been through so many scenarios. We haven't been through every scenario. But if we can help others tell their story and get their story out there, that's so good. Like, I see the benefit of the story.
Yeah. And it's funny because tonight, right before we did this, we finished up with a couple for premarital. Mm-hmm. And that, premarital, that didn't make it either. That was not on a list. That was not on our radar. That was nowhere, And I mean, the opportunity eloped.
And we had no premarital.
Yeah, the opportunity presented itself, and our yes is on the table. Whatever you got a yes. And that has been an incredible season. We've done
encouragement. It's such an encouraging.
We're just finishing the second season, getting ready to start the third of that. But this couple we're finishing up with. Because of the holidays and stuff, we didn't get everything finished. And it was our final meeting, and we're talking about stuff. And Kristen asked the question, if you could change anything, any critiques or whatever, what can we do different and stuff like that? And what did she say? Or actually, he said, what did he say?
He said, guys, this isn't really a critique, but your story it blows me away. And I would just encourage you to continue to just tell your story more, lead with that. And she said that it raised her faith so that she knew that if we could go through everything we went through, that there's hope for almost anybody. And she said she didn't want us to take that the wrong way, which I did not.
Right.
But that just to have that, don't quit, continue. And, that was very encouraging to us because looking back, especially as we're looking back now at the vision retreats at the last few years at what we put down on paper that we were going to work into, of what we put down on paper that we were asking God for, and what we were putting down on paper that we felt we were being pulled in the direction of, it's all in line and it's all God.
Yeah, absolutely. And, just it is. And when, we've looked through those books a couple times this week and stuff, just preparing for this weekend. And, to see where we were, to see the vision he gave us, to see where we've come to, the things that we do, the opportunities that he has opened for us. And even last year, when we kind of had a glimpse, we had a group that was great people. We came back from our vision retreat last year early.
Yeah. Oh,
because one of the guys who was really new to our group.
You just barely knew him.
Yeah. Was getting baptized. And asked me if I would do it. So, so it was kind of like a glimpse of the year to come.
Yeah, it really was.
And then looking back on last year.
Since then, we have had the pleasure of being involved in so many of our good friends that we didn't even have a year ago right now. But we have built these family relationships with, and these groups, and this just this family of people that we've been involved in so many other baptisms and life change. And it's just such a gift and a privilege from God to say, you get to see me working. And this is what happens when you put your yes on the table, when you surrender, and when you allow me to work through you. I mean, none of it is us. It's all God. And just, I am so humbled to be able to have a front row seat at Life Change. Like, it's just unbelievable. And I know our pastor says, I hope this never gets old. I mean, just I can't imagine.
Absolutely.
It won't. Like, if you were involved in Life Change and see it happen, and just see people come in at the brink of divorce or pulling back their divorce, and then see months later full surrender, being baptized, and sharing marriage, God's will for marriage with other couples. Like, it's so beautiful. You just want to sit there, and it's like heaven on earth.
Yeah. And it really, in the end, it makes you realize a couple things. One, that all your mess, all the crap you've been through is worth it.
It's worth it. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you can help somebody
else. Yeah.
And give them that hope and show them that, listen, you're not too broken. It's not too broken.
And we're all a big hot mess.
Yeah. And then the other thing, as I looked back, especially today, I mean, it's been a crazy week of things for us, and just incredible.
Yeah.
God working in incredible ways. But when I read through those things and I looked, and like I said, last year we had a glimpse. We're like, all right, we're headed this direction and stuff. And then this year it's like, no. God's like, no. You don't even understand. What I have is so much better.
Immeasurably more.
Than you can ever even imagine.
Or hope.
Yeah. So
amazing. So just giving it to him and knowing that he's got it, and greater things are still to come.
The best is yet to come. And it doesn't matter, Furtick said that a long time ago, and it rings true. The best is yet to come.
Yeah.
And I think that's it with the Vision Retreat, and like with us and why we're passionate about it, whether it's us doing it ourselves, us taking people with us, or you guys. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you've been married. If you just got married, or if you've been married 50 years, there is value in it.
Absolutely.
Getting on that same page. And don't just do it once. Because to me, that's it. Like, when we look back over these last couple years of where we were and where we are, and it's not anything to, like Kristen said, it's not us, but what God has done.
Yep.
And amazing. We have had the honor of being a part of and watching happen around us and sharing our story. That's the good stuff.
Amen.
It's all about community and doing life together.
I'm very excited to go on Vision Retreat with couples this weekend. So I think the reason is because I want to ignite some of that excitement in other people and Life Change. And I know it'll change their lives. So
and that's it. All the stuff that we talk about, all the stuff we do, we're not giving you anything we haven't been through. We don't try. We don't do. We don't have all the answers.
No, and we will probably fail, and
we fail.
But just
like, if you're around us, you know that. And if you don't, ask our daughters; they'll tell you. They have a front row. But don't compare your marriage to somebody else's highlight reel.
Nope. You got to go through it. So
absolutely. So that is it for this week's Marriage in the Buff podcast. We are headed to Canada this weekend with some friends. Oh, don't sing. I think that was the you were looking for. Oh, don't sing.
No.
But great week. Looking forward to an amazing weekend.
Yes.
And hopefully maybe we'll have a guest next weekend or next week, and some good stuff coming up. Have a great week, guys. Please take a minute, like the podcast, subscribe, leave a comment. If you got a question, email us, Kevin@marriageinthebuff.com.
Questions would be great.
Absolutely.
Put new topics on.
Yeah, something that you want us to talk about or try to help you answer or find somebody who can. We know a lot of people. That is one good thing. God keeps putting people in our paths.
Have a good night, guys.
Take care.